The roar of the crowd fades into silence when Brock Lesnar's music hits, and there's a reason why every single person in that arena knows they're about to witness something different. This isn't just another wrestler making an entrance. This is a man who has made grown professionals question their career choices, a competitor so physically dominant that even the toughest veterans in wrestling history have had to stop and acknowledge what they were dealing with. But before we dive deep into what makes Lesnar the most terrifying force in sports entertainment, make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're bringing you the untold stories that will change how you see professional wrestling forever. Kurt Angle was an Olympic gold medalist who came into WWE with a legitimate pedigree that most wrestlers could only dream about. He had conquered the world on the biggest stage in amateur wrestling, and when he transitioned to professional wrestling, he carried that aura of invincibility with him. Then he met Brock Lesnar. Angle has gone on record multiple times stating that working with Lesnar was unlike anything he had ever experienced in his entire athletic career. The speed, the power, the raw athleticism that Lesnar brought to the ring made Angle feel like he was wrestling someone from another planet. Here was a man who could execute a shooting star press at nearly 300 pounds, something that defied every law of physics and human capability. Angle talked about how Lesnar's amateur wrestling background combined with his freakish strength created a perfect storm of ability that nobody in the business could replicate. The thing about Lesnar that separates him from every other powerhouse who has ever stepped into a WWE ring is the combination of attributes that simply shouldn't exist in one human being. Big Show, another legend who has faced everyone from Hulk Hogan to Roman Reigns, has spoken extensively about what made Lesnar special. Show mentioned that he had worked with hundreds of wrestlers throughout his career, faced men who were strong, faced men who were quick, faced men who were technical, but he had never faced anyone who possessed all of those qualities at an elite level simultaneously. When Lesnar picked up Big Show for an F5, something that seemed physically impossible given the size difference, it sent a message to everyone in the locker room. This wasn't just about scripted entertainment anymore. This was about genuine athletic superiority that couldn't be faked or manufactured. The Undertaker's battles with Lesnar became the stuff of legend, particularly because the dead man had been WWE's ultimate final boss for over 2 decades. The Undertaker rarely broke character or spoke about his opponents in shoot interviews, but when he did discuss Lesnar, there was a noticeable shift in his tone. He acknowledged that Lesnar brought a level of realism to their matches that forced him to adapt his entire approach. The Undertaker was used to being the one who intimidated his opponents, the one who controlled the pace and the psychology of the match. With Lesnar, that dynamic shifted. Here was someone who wasn't afraid of the mystique, someone whose physical presence matched or exceeded his own, and someone who could genuinely hurt him if things went wrong. The respect in Undertaker's voice when discussing their encounters told the real story of what it was like to be in the ring with Lesnar. Hardcore Holly experienced the darker side of working with Lesnar during their infamous match where a botched powerbomb resulted in Holly suffering a broken neck. What's remarkable about Holly's perspective is that despite the severity of the injury, he never blamed Lesnar's ability or professionalism. Holly was known throughout the industry as one of the toughest men to ever lace up boots, someone who didn't complain and certainly didn't make excuses. When Holly returned from that injury and continued to speak highly of Lesnar's talent, it said everything about the respect Lesnar commanded even from someone he had accidentally injured. Holly explained that the power Lesnar possessed was so immense that even when everything went according to plan, you felt every single move in a way that was different from working with anyone else. Chris Jericho has wrestled in more promotions and faced more opponents than almost anyone in the history of the business. Jericho's career spans decades and continents, and his list of opponents reads like a who's who of professional wrestling. When Jericho talks about Lesnar, he focuses on something that often gets overlooked in discussions about physical specimens, the mind. Jericho has pointed out that Lesnar's intelligence in the ring is severely underrated. People see the suplexes and the brute force and assume that's all there is, but Jericho explained that Lesnar has an innate understanding of psychology and timing that most wrestlers never develop. Lesnar knows exactly when to explode and when to slow things down. He understands how to make his offense look devastating without actually destroying his opponent. That level of ring awareness combined with his physical gifts made him nearly impossible to have a bad match with, according to Jericho. Paul Heyman, while not a wrestler himself, has been in the business long enough to evaluate talent at the highest level. Heyman's relationship with Lesnar has given him insights that few others possess. Heyman has repeatedly stated that Lesnar is the most naturally gifted athlete he has ever seen in professional wrestling, and coming from someone who has managed and worked with everyone from CM Punk to Rob Van Dam to the original ECW roster, that statement carries enormous weight. Heyman talks about how Lesnar could have been a champion in multiple sports if he had chosen different paths. The NFL gave him a legitimate shot despite never playing college football. UFC made him a world champion in the heavyweight division. And in WWE, he became the youngest WWE champion in history. That versatility and ability to excel at the highest level in completely different athletic endeavors is something Heyman believes will never be duplicated. Stone Cold Steve Austin, arguably the biggest star in wrestling history, has shared stories about watching Lesnar's development and being amazed at how quickly he picked up the nuances of professional wrestling. Austin came from a background where he had to grind for years to master his craft, working countless matches in small promotions before getting his big break. Lesnar showed up with his amateur wrestling credentials and within a year was working at a main event level that took most people a decade to reach. Austin has mentioned that what impressed him most wasn't just the physical ability, but the confidence that Lesnar displayed. There was never any doubt in Lesnar's mind that he belonged at the top of the card. That mental fortitude combined with the physical tools created someone who was essentially groomed for superstardom from day one. Goldberg's interactions with Lesnar became one of the most talked about rivalries in wrestling, particularly when they faced each other after years away from their original encounter. Goldberg himself is considered one of the most dominant forces in wrestling history, a man whose undefeated streak in WCW became legendary. When Goldberg talks about Lesnar, there's a mutual respect between two competitors who understand what it means to be presented as an unstoppable force. Goldberg acknowledged that their styles were similar in some ways, both relying on explosive power and intensity, but he gave Lesnar credit for having more versatility in his moveset. While Goldberg's offense was built around a few devastating moves, Lesnar could hit you with suplexes from multiple angles, could execute submissions, could brawl, could work technical. That diversity made Lesnar more unpredictable and, in Goldberg's opinion, more dangerous. Rey Mysterio's matches with Lesnar created some of the most visually striking contrasts in WWE history. Here was the ultimate underdog facing what appeared to be an insurmountable challenge. Mysterio has talked about how working with Lesnar required complete trust, because the size and strength differential meant that one mistake could result in serious injury. What Mysterio appreciated about Lesnar was his willingness to make Mysterio's offense look credible. Despite being able to legitimately ragdoll Mysterio around the ring, Lesnar sold for him in ways that made their matches believable. That professional courtesy and understanding of how to work with someone so much smaller demonstrated a level of maturity that Mysterio didn't always see from other big men in the business. Ric Flair, the 16-time world champion who has been in the ring with every major star from multiple generations, put Lesnar on a very short list of performers who could have succeeded in any era of wrestling. Flair's career spanned from the territorial days through the Monday Night Wars and into the modern era, so his perspective carries historical weight. Flair said that Lesnar had the look that every promoter dreams of, the kind of physique and presence that made people stop whatever they were doing and pay attention. But more importantly, Flair noted that Lesnar could work. He wasn't just a body. He could go out there for 20 minutes or 30 minutes and tell a story. That combination of look and ability is what Flair built his own career on, and recognizing it in Lesnar was the ultimate compliment from the Nature Boy. Triple H's Evolution program in WWE involved working extensively with Lesnar during his initial run and then again years later. Triple H has stated in interviews that Lesnar forced him to change his entire approach to matches. Triple H was used to being one of the bigger, stronger guys in his feuds, someone who could use his size and power as part of his heel persona. Against Lesnar, those advantages disappeared. Triple H had to rely more on his psychology and character work because he couldn't out-muscle or out-athlete Lesnar. Those matches pushed Triple H to be more creative, and he credits Lesnar with helping him evolve as a performer during that period. Shelton Benjamin, who was Lesnar's tag team partner during their days in developmental, has probably the most unique perspective of anyone. Benjamin saw Lesnar before the Monster Push, before the Paul Heyman promos, before any of the mystique was built. Benjamin talks about how even in practice, even in training sessions when nothing was on the line, Lesnar operated at a different intensity level than everyone else. The competitiveness was built into his DNA. Benjamin mentioned that they would wrestle in the ring after training sessions were over, just working on technique and trying new things, and Lesnar's focus never wavered. That dedication to the craft, combined with abilities that were already off the charts, made it obvious to Benjamin that his partner was destined for something special. CM Punk's match with Lesnar came at a point in Punk's career where he was established as one of WWE's top stars, someone who had main event WrestleMania and carried the company through a resurgence period. Punk has been notoriously critical of many aspects of WWE and the wrestling business in general, but when discussing Lesnar, the critique turns to praise. Punk talked about how Lesnar understood that less is more, that you didn't need to do a million moves to get over, you just needed to make every single thing you did matter. That philosophy aligned with Punk's own beliefs about wrestling, and their match reflected that minimalist approach where every strike, every suplex, every movement had weight and consequence. Eddie Guerrero's series with Lesnar produced some of the most emotionally resonant matches in WWE history. Eddie was significantly smaller than Lesnar and didn't possess the same physical advantages, but he made up for it with heart and cunning. Eddie spoke about how Lesnar was willing to work a style that played to Eddie's strengths, allowing Eddie to get his offense in and tell the underdog story that resonated so deeply with fans. The respect between the two was evident, and Eddie mentioned that despite Lesnar's reputation as this unstoppable force, he was actually very generous in the ring when it came to making his opponents look good. That generosity is something that not every top guy possesses, and Eddie appreciated it. John Cena's multiple encounters with Lesnar became defining moments for both men's careers. Cena was WWE's top guy for over a decade, the face of the company, and someone who rarely lost clean. When Lesnar returned to WWE and absolutely demolished Cena at SummerSlam, it shocked the wrestling world. Cena has discussed how that match changed his perspective on his own position in the company. He realized that sometimes you need to step aside and let someone else be the dominant force, especially when that person is as special as Lesnar. Cena gave credit to Lesnar for being able to come back after years away and immediately recapture that aura of invincibility. Most wrestlers lose a step when they're away from the business, but Lesnar seemed to come back stronger and more focused than ever. Randy Orton's match with Lesnar at SummerSlam, which ended with the controversial finish involving legitimate elbows that busted Orton open, became one of the most talked about moments in recent WWE history. Orton, who comes from wrestling royalty and has been in the business his entire life, understood the risks involved in working with someone like Lesnar. The willingness to go to that extreme level showed the trust Orton had in Lesnar's ability to work stiff without going too far. Orton has mentioned that working with Lesnar felt different from working with anyone else because the physicality was ramped up to a level that most modern WWE matches don't reach. That old-school, hard-hitting style is something Orton appreciated because it made the match feel more real. AJ Styles, who came to WWE with an incredible reputation built over years in TNA and Japan, faced Lesnar in a match that many fans had wanted to see for years. Styles talked about how Lesnar's reputation preceded him, and there was genuine nervousness going into that match. But once they got in the ring together, Styles realized that Lesnar was a true professional who knew how to work with different styles. Styles' high-flying, fast-paced approach contrasted perfectly with Lesnar's power-based offense, and the result was a match that showcased both men's strengths. Styles gave Lesnar credit for being able to adapt to his style and create something that felt fresh despite Lesnar having wrestled for so many years. Daniel Bryan's story of being told he couldn't wrestle because of concussion issues, only to eventually return and face Lesnar, added another layer to Lesnar's legacy. Bryan, who built his career on being the ultimate underdog and fighting against all odds, saw Lesnar as the ultimate challenge. Bryan talked about how working with Lesnar was actually safer in some ways than working with smaller, less experienced guys because Lesnar was so experienced and so in control of what he was doing in the ring. The strength allowed Lesnar to catch Bryan if something went wrong, to adjust on the fly, to protect his opponent in ways that required both power and awareness. Samoa Joe's confrontations with Lesnar produced some of the most intense promo exchanges in WWE history. Joe, who had his own reputation as a legitimate tough guy, wasn't intimidated by Lesnar's presence. Their face-offs felt real because both men carried themselves as fighters rather than entertainers. Joe has mentioned that Lesnar respected people who stood up to him, who didn't back down, and their interactions reflected that mutual respect. The physicality of their match was exactly what fans expected, two men who looked like they genuinely wanted to hurt each other, and Joe credited Lesnar with being willing to work that style when many top stars preferred a safer approach. Braun Strowman's rivalry with Lesnar created dream matches between two of the most physically imposing wrestlers on the roster. Strowman, who was being built as WWE's next monster, needed someone who could make him look vulnerable, and Lesnar was perfect for that role. Strowman talked about how working with Lesnar taught him about pacing and psychology. It would have been easy for their matches to just be two big men throwing each other around, but Lesnar made sure there was structure and story to everything they did. That veteran presence helped Strowman develop as a performer in ways that working with smaller, more traditional wrestlers couldn't have accomplished. Seth Rollins had multiple championship matches with Lesnar at various points in his career, and each one told a different story. Rollins has discussed how Lesnar's part-time schedule actually added to the special attraction feel of their matches. When you only saw Lesnar a handful of times a year, his appearances meant something. Rollins appreciated that aspect because it elevated whoever was in the ring with him. A match with Lesnar wasn't just another title defense, it was an event. Rollins also noted that despite the limited schedule, Lesnar never phoned it in. When he showed up, he was fully invested in making the match as good as possible. Roman Reigns' multiple WrestleMania main events against Lesnar became a defining rivalry for both men. Reigns, who WWE was desperately trying to establish as the next top babyface, needed Lesnar as the final boss to conquer. Reigns has spoken about how those matches with Lesnar taught him about working big match style, about understanding that less is more at that level. The criticism that both men received for some of their matches was that they were too long or too repetitive, but Reigns defended the approach by saying that Lesnar was teaching him how to work like a champion, how to make every move count, how to build to crescendos that made the near falls matter. That education from Lesnar shaped Reigns into the performer he eventually became. The consistent thread through all of these testimonials from legends and top stars is that Lesnar represents something that cannot be manufactured or created through the normal wrestling development process. His combination of legitimate athletic ability, physical presence, ring awareness, and professional approach made him a once-in-a-generation talent. The fear in opponents' eyes when his music hit wasn't just good acting, it was a genuine reaction to knowing they were about to be in the ring with someone who operated on a different level. The suplexes that looked more devastating than anyone else's weren't just camera tricks, they were the result of genuine strength applied with precision. The aura of invincibility wasn't built through booking alone, it was built on the foundation of abilities that backed up everything the company said about him. What makes these stories from wrestling legends so compelling is the consistency of the message. These aren't carefully crafted corporate talking points or scripted endorsements. These are professionals who have worked with hundreds of opponents over decades of career time, and they all arrive at the same conclusion about Lesnar. Whether it's Olympic gold medalists like Kurt Angle, legendary tough guys like Hardcore Holly, technical masters like Chris Jericho, or cultural icons like Stone Cold Steve Austin, everyone acknowledges that Lesnar is different. The respect transcends the scripted nature of professional wrestling and enters the realm of legitimate athletic admiration. The legacy that Lesnar has built isn't just about championships or WrestleMania main events or record-breaking title reigns. It's about fundamentally changing how people think about what's possible in professional wrestling. Before Lesnar, the idea that someone could be that big, that strong, that athletic, and that skilled all at once seemed like fantasy booking. Lesnar made it reality. He showed that you could have the physique of a bodybuilder, the skills of an amateur wrestler, the agility of a cruiserweight, and the mind of a veteran all in one package. That template has influenced how WWE and other promotions evaluate and develop talent ever since. The Beast Incarnate nickname isn't marketing hyperbole. It's an accurate description of what happens when genetic gifts meet world-class training meets unwavering dedication meets natural aptitude for combat sports. The legends who have shared the ring with Lesnar don't use that nickname lightly or jokingly. They use it because they experienced firsthand what it means to face someone who truly is different from everyone else who has ever stepped into a wrestling ring. Their testimonials serve as historical record of what made Brock Lesnar not just a great wrestler, but a phenomenon that redefined what greatness means in this industry. If you've made it this far, you're clearly a real fan of wrestling history and insider stories, so do yourself a favor and subscribe to stay updated on more content that goes beyond the surface and reveals what really happens in the world of professional wrestling.